Your day's been a tough one, think on this. You were not at least stuck in an EU exit and trade subcommittee for nearly 11 hours in Chequers. Unless, of course, you were one of those and you've just switched on Newsnight to find out what actually happened after you dozed off halfway through. This is the meeting that hopes to finally resolve whether the UK will seek to retain close regulatory alignment with the EU. We're not expecting any details from the PM before Thursday. Mr Corbyn is hoping to pip the PM to the post with an announcement of his own position on Brexit next week. Well, tonight, Emily Thornberry told LBC's Iain that Labour would replicate the customs union post-Brexit. He's here now with the Times columnist Matthew Parris and the director of the Centre for Labour and Social Studies, Faiza Shaheen. A warm welcome to all of you. It played a blinder today. Just tell us what you heard.
Well, Emily Thornberry came in to do a phone-in. Obviously, the customs union is the big thing. We're all expecting Jeremy Corbyn to make some sort of announcement on it on Thursday. So I thought, well, I'm not going to ask her what he's going to say because she won't tell me if I ask her that. So I just said, well, your thinking is developing on the customs union, isn't it, Emily? And she then said, well, absolutely it is, and we don't intend to stay in the customs union, but we're going to have something as near as damn it to it, which would mean that we would not be able to negotiate our own trade agreement. She said that Britain would have a special role with the EU in negotiating these new trade agreements. But, I mean, why the EU would agree to that, I do not know.
Is she going out on a limb? Do you think this is the Corbyn position now?
No, I don't think she is going out on a limb at all. I think this is what Jeremy Corbyn will announce on Monday. And that's going to be quite interesting because 65% of Labour members voted Remain, but that's not the same for Labour voters. And I think there are going to be a lot of Labour voters think, well, hang on a minute, we've heard all of this rhetoric from John McDonnell and Jeremy Corbyn about we respect the wishes of the British people, blah, blah, blah. Well, staying in the customs union effectively does mean at least partially staying in the EU.
We're just trying to see if there is clear water now. Laura Kunsbo, just the last few moments, has said that the UK, the Cabinet has agreed that the UK wants to stick to its standards, but on its own terms. What does that sound like to you?
You can ask me. What does that sound like? I mean, we've just heard so much language that has been created to cover up the fact that our government hasn't got a decision on what they're doing and how they're going to do it. And I'm sure I'm not the only person frustrated. We're having business lobbies coming up with their own plans in the meantime. You know, that to me is like, well, we might have some divergence, we might not. We might have to look again about what we do with the Northern Ireland border, but that's not in any way any clarity, is it?
But it is a breakthrough of unity. This is what Laura certainly is hearing tonight. Do you feel, Matthew, from just the snippets that are coming out, that the Cabinet has got to a place now where they can look each other in the eye and say, we're united?
No. You know that they couldn't have because we know that they're split among themselves. They have very different opinions. There is no way that Philip Hammond can look Liam Fox in the eye and say we're united. I think we have to treat these early rumours with some caution. You know those dreams you have where you're about to take an exam and you haven't even read the syllabus? I think Mrs May probably has this nightmare that she's about to announce a Brexit plan and she hasn't got one.
What do you think they're doing then for you know, all this time, from sort of lunch onwards until I think it's just broken up now, the last half hour? What are they doing if
they... Just repeat that phrase again that Laura said, that they've agreed what?
From what I understand, they have agreed, I've just a breakthrough of unity in the Cabinet for now. This is according to one minister.
Well, James Forsyth, from the political editor of The Spectator, is reporting that they've agreed on divergence. Now, if that is the case... Well, if that is the case...
Well, you mean divergence within the Cabinet?
No. Divergence from EU regulations, right. As you well know, Emily. Now, if that is the case, that will be seen as a breakthrough for the Prime Minister, because she will have got Philip Hammond and Amber Rudd and whoever else, David Lidington, on side. I have my doubts as to whether that's necessarily the case, because I think that Matthew is right. There is this split within the Cabinet. Now, the Brexiteers, I think, slightly have the upper hand, and I don't think that Liam Fox, Boris Johnson, possibly to a lesser extent David Davis, could live with a situation where there was going to be more or less full regulatory alignment. Now, there will be alignment on a lot of things. In particular industries, it is in our interest to keep some sort of alignment, but we've got to have the freedom not to do that.
Just hearing that a source has told Laura that divergence has won, right? Divergence has won. So you're now cheering. if this is right?
Well, I don't see the point of leaving the EU if you're just going to obey all the rules in perpetuity without any say in how they're adopted. Now, it may be that in some industries, we do mirror EU regulations. So I'm not saying that we have to be completely divergent, but we have to judge it on a case-by-case basis.
I mean, this would then be clear water. If Corbyn, Emily Thornberry, John McDonnell are going to come out next week and say, we think there is now a change of heart or change of policy for Labour, do you think that's where we're going to get to?
Look, the big thing is then what does that mean for the Northern Ireland border when you have divergence? And this has been the whole problem of the last year. We seem to be going at this the wrong way and making this more about politics rather than thinking about what this means for people, and in particular about that border. Like, let's start with what can you do there? Because that is ultimately, we have this conversation and then you come all the way back round and go, but Northern Ireland, we can't do that.
I think it's because people on, and I don't want to put words into Matthew's mouth, but I will anyway. I mean, people on the Remain side of the argument are viewing this as an insoluble problem. It isn't insoluble. When you've got the Irish government who don't want a border, the British government don't want a border, the EU doesn't want to have a border. So what there will
requires a border.
No, it doesn't, because what will happen?
Well, let Matthew put the words into his own mouth then.
There will be a bespoke customs arrangement to make sure that
does that work?
Oh, the lovely phrases, bespoke customs arrangement, deep and special partnership. They're all just words. The question is, are we going to get a hard Brexit or a soft Brexit? If what you've heard is true, it's going to be a fairly hard Brexit. In that case, I think there's a majority in the House of Commons with all the Labour Party, if they will go for customs union, as now seems likely, and 50 or 60 members of the Conservative Party, you actually have a majority for blocking this.
OK, so you now trust that Corbyn will go one way, with the support probably of the SNP, of the devolved nations, of the Lords probably as well. Can a May government survive that, then?
I don't think so, no. No, there is no majority in Parliament for that outcome, and I don't see how a May government could survive.
And as a Remainer Conservative, how would you vote if it came to an election then?
A general election?
Yeah.
I couldn't vote for Jeremy Corbyn as Prime Minister. I stay in the Conservative Party so I can vote against either Boris Johnson or Jacob Rees-Mogg ever becoming leader of the party.
But you wouldn't think, if it came to it, it was more important to give your Remainer vote to Corbyn if he was aligned with the customs union?
I would be very torn. I suppose loyalty to the old tribe would prevail, but there will be millions of people for whom it won't.
Faiza, we've seen a lot of people get up to the brink, make the speeches, do the words, and then they sort of run away, they bottle it. We don't actually hear anyone change your position or clarifying a position at all. Do you actually think this is the week, next week is the week, that we're going to hear a defined new Labour position in your heart?
Look, things are moving and we are coming to a point where a lot of people are frustrated and are saying, look, we're getting to that 1 year since we triggered Brexit. How can we not have a plan right now? And businesses are quite rightly saying, we can't go on like this. And we're hearing from workers, we just put out a report, hearing that, you know, in our workspaces, the investment's not being made. You know, our employers are holding back on what they're doing in terms of wages. So we have hit a crunch point. So Labour themselves have to, you know, there's a lot of pressure on them to come up with, you know, a much more solid plan as well. So I do think it has to happen now. And if it doesn't happen, the repercussions for people's lives in this kind of insecure environment, you know, we also found a majority that worry that the economy is a threat to their employment because they just don't know what's happening. So actually, our politicians haven't been doing their job and they need to be rolling out their plans, saying what they're going to do going forward, especially the government in power.
Well, I think you're right. The government do have to say a lot more about what their plans are, and hopefully that's going to... I mean, we expected it 3 months ago. Hopefully we're going to get it from Theresa May next week. But there's been another development tonight where Anna Soubry has put down an amendment to the trade bill calling for a customs union. Now, there aren't 60 members of Parliament, Conservative members of Parliament who would vote for that, but there are probably a dozen or 15, and that would be enough, in theory, for the government to be defeated. Now, if that happens, you then presumably go to a situation where you have a vote of confidence, because Theresa May cannot possibly allow that to go through because it undermines her entire strategy, assuming that there is a strategy. So you're right. There could well be some very interesting times when that amendment is
Do you
debated.
think it helps or does it help the Conservatives and Brexiteers if there is a more solid commitment from Labour to the customs union?
It's a difficult one. I mean, I think Labour are in a very cleft stick here with their own supporters and with their own membership. And I mean, Faiza will rightly say that the Conservative Party has its divides on this, but the Labour Party does too. And I don't know. I mean, if there was a general election as a result of this, say Parliament did vote to stay in a customs union or a form of customs union, and Theresa May thought she couldn't carry on that basis. I just don't know how the parties would go into an election.
Is anyone cancelling their holidays?
No.
May, June?
No, I'm not.
And I won't be making any more election predictions either.
We have been conflating two different plans. One is the plan for the transition period, and the other is the plan for after the transition period. And it's quite possible that the Cabinet have agreed that there's going to be divergence after the transition period, but convergence or staying together during it.
I think that's right.
That's probably the...
Do you think Corbyn is now sniffing power? Do you think that's what this is about?
Yeah, and look, the point is, right, the membership in general, the Labour membership supports even staying in the single market. But the big thing, of course, is that if we run the election, what happened last year, the domestic issues really matter, and that's where the Conservative Party has failed massively. You know, and because of Brexit, they've been kicking the can down the road on various different issues. Okay. You know, various different consultations after consultation. So, you know, if there was another general election, Labour can go hard, and they have a different position. If they have a different position, that will help them on Brexit.
We've run out, but thank you all very much indeed, and thanks for coming in. That's it. Evan is here tomorrow. Till then, from all of us here, very good night. Thanks for watching.